Welcome to Portsmouth Insights. I'm your host, Rob Lauer, and we're filming today from within the new Portsmouth Courts complex. Well, the race is on to find new sources of energy, not only as an alternative to traditional sources, but also as a way to help preserve the environment. There's one company here in Portsmouth that's finding energy from a very surprising source, and they're helping preserve the environment. And speaking of environment, we'll also interview today EPA's Randy Sturgeon. And finally, in our neighborhood sequence, we're going to visit a very different sort of neighborhood. So stay tuned to this episode of Portsmouth Insights. If you're like most people, you probably don't give a lot of thought to where your garbage goes once you throw it away. You assume it ends up in a landfill or simply being burned somewhere. And in most U.S. cities, that would be true. But here in Hampton Roads, things are a little different. For the past few years, the waste from 8 different localities has been taken by a company located here in Portsmouth and then converted into steam energy and clean electricity. That company is Wheelabrator Portsmouth, and recently we visited them. I'm joined now by Rob Clendenin, who's the Senior Manager of Business Development at Wheelabrator Portsmouth, Inc., and also Paul Grego, who's the Plant Manager. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen.
Thanks.
I was wondering, Wheelabrator refers to itself as a waste-to-energy facility. How is that different from a mere waste management company?
Well, waste management is more of a hierarchy of how waste is managed. Mm-hmm. So waste-to-energy is kind of a component of that hierarchy. So for example, whereas reuse or recycling would probably be the most preferred use of waste, mm-hmm. Waste to energy is beneath that, whereas landfilling would be the least favorable option. So it's in that hierarchy of waste management. So it's a component of how waste is handled. Okay, so the waste is basically converted into energy. What process is involved? Can you describe that process of waste to energy?
It's a very interesting process. You know, the collection gets picked up at the curbsite, comes to our plant, gets weighed in for billing purposes, and then that waste gets dumped on an enclosed tipping floor over at the RDF processing facility. From there, it gets conveyed and shredded into 4 inches or less, and all the metals are removed. So now that fuel is now fuel for the power plant on this side.
Wow.
So that fuel goes into a 4,000 ton storage pit, and we have overhead refuge cranes that pick that trash up and feed the 4 high pressure boilers. So through a conveying system and augers, that fuel then gets blown into a high pressure boiler. That's the fuel that create the steam, which would otherwise in a conventional power plant would be fuel oil or coal. Mm-hmm. You know, we're using trash. So we create high pressure steam at high temperatures, and that steam gets directed to a turbine generator. We have 3 20 megawatt turbine generators, and that power gets through transmission lines right onto the main grid. So this power at your home in the industry is being powered by trash. Part of it is, it's amazing, isn't it?
It really is.
So the residue then, so now you burn that trash and you have residue, which is ash. There's a reduction of about 90%. Mm-hmm. So that's 90% less space that you take up in a landfill. So you're really conserving your valuable landfill space for many, many decades to come through waste to energy. The other thing we do too is this particular plant, when it was built, was built to supply the Norfolk Naval Shipyard with steam for heating and other uses. So once that steam goes to our turbine, we make the power, we extract low pressure steam from that, and that goes to the Naval Shipyard.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is amazing.
Well, you mentioned boilers and different things. I mean, are there other special technologies or equipment or skill sets among employees that are needed?
It is. You know, in waste energy, it's a very diverse skill sets. I mean, you have the administrative, accounting, and financing. Boilers, turbine generators. You know, a lot of our people are from the U.S. Navy, got a lot of training in the U.S. Merchant Marines on steam and power generation. So you got those technicians. you have welders, you have mechanics, you have E&I, electrical instrumentation technicians, we have water lab technicians, we have crane operators, heavy equipment operators for all the different components that make up a power plant. And as far as technology, you know, this technology, this is RDF, refuse-derived fuel. This is an older technology in shredding the trash and taking the metals out prior to putting it into the boilers. The newer technology is what they call mass burn, where you don't shred the trash. The way it gets picked up, it gets put into a pit, and those cranes feed it right into the boiler just as it comes off your curb site. And that's kind of the newer technology in a waste energy plant.
Okay, but now you mentioned about the supplying energy to the shipyard. Where else is the energy used locally?
The energy goes right on the PJM. That is the transmission network for this whole geographical area. So it goes from our turbines, from our generator through a switchyard, right onto that main grid. It's the same grid. The Dominion Power and the major power plants in the area are on the same transmission line, sharing the same power that you buy for your home or businesses. And that's where the power goes.
That's amazing. Well, now Wheelabrator, the company itself, can you tell me something about the history of Wheelabrator?
Wheelabrator started back in 1975, was the first waste energy plant in Saugus, Massachusetts. That's our pioneer plant. You know, from them, you know, over the years, we have 17 plants now running around the country, burning waste energy. We produce we burn approximately 23,000 tons per day of municipal solid waste, and that's an average of 669 megawatts. That's a million watts an hour of power.
Wow.
You know, going onto the grid each and every day from our 17 plants. We've also expanded into the UK and China over the last several years also.
Okay, so how long have you been here in Portsmouth?
We acquired the plant about 2.5 years ago. I've been with Wheelabrator for about 25 years, since 1984, since our third plant. It was Baltimore Resco. It's a 2250 ton a day plant in Baltimore City.
Okay, so what is the impact, would you say, of Wheelabrator here on the community in Portsmouth, both environmentally perhaps, but also maybe economically? I mean, like as far as the number of people you employ and that sort of thing.
We employ about 155
employees.
Right,
and I mean, as far as, you know, you think about it, you think about the economy, right? We employ 155 employees here. A lot of them live right here in the city of Portsmouth. But not only that, all the maintenance work we do and the contract work we do every single month, we have local contractors, mechanical contractors, electrical contractors from this geographical area creating jobs for Portsmouth. I mean, it's a great thing.
Right. Okay, so you really do have an impact then on the local economy.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what's in the future for Wheelabrator Portsmouth?
I would say, you know, we have worked really hard since acquiring the plant in the last 2 years to get it up to an operating standard that will have it ready and prepared to process the region's waste for decades to come. And that really was our goal in acquiring the plant. It was not necessarily in bad shape, but it wasn't in the best of shape. And so, you know, over the 2 years we've owned it, we've you know, put some emphasis on improving the performance of it so it's in a position to handle waste again for decades to come, and that will be our goal, obviously.
Yeah, Robert, this is a great, if you look at this Hampton Roads solid waste system that they have, people would die to have this. They have strategic transfer stations that SIPSA runs, right? They have a regional landfill, and they have a large waste energy plant that can take all the waste in the geographical area. So you got renewable energy, you have a landfill that you can make last, you know, decades and decades to come. It seems to be very strategically located transfer stations due to the traffic, you know, with the bridges and the tunnels down in the Hampton Roads area, and it works very well. It's very complex. It is one of the most complex plants to run, you know, given though, you know, all the intricacies of timing, landfill hours, congestion of traffic, and we make it all happen.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us. Best of luck, I mean, with the future and what you're doing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wheelabrator Portsmouth is providing clean energy in a way that benefits the environment. When we return, we'll meet a gentleman who's dedicated his career to preserving a part of the local environment, the Elizabeth River. The EPA's Randy Sturgeon will be interviewed next, so stay tuned.
poisoning affects over 1 million children today. Just 3 granules of lead dust can harm your child. If your home was built before 1978, log on to leadfreekids.org.
Welcome back to Portsmouth Insights. For years, we've been hearing about efforts to clean up the Elizabeth River. And on recent episodes, we've looked at organizations such as the Elizabeth River Project and examined their role in that effort. The EPA's Randy Sturgeon has also played a vital role in that work. Though he lives in Pennsylvania, he's here in Portsmouth throughout the year. Last week, when he was in town, we sat down with him to discuss his work. Randy, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Listen, I was wondering what first led you into a career in environmental protection?
Well, I stumbled onto it as much as anything. I graduated with a chemical engineering degree from Louisiana State and went to work in the private chemical industry, and then got a job working for a disposal firm. And actually moved to Philadelphia to help start a church and was looking for a job and ended up finding one at the Environmental Protection Agency.
Well, yeah, you don't usually think of chemical companies and environmental protection all in the same.
No, you oftentimes don't. But I've been excited working at EPA for, I don't know, close to 23 years now.
Wow.
And getting to learn to help other people with my career. And so it's been exciting.
Well, listen, I know that you worked on the Elizabeth River. Now, the Elizabeth River, that's played a part in the history and the development of Portsmouth for centuries. And over the last few decades, we've been hearing about how the shape it's in and how bad that shape is. When you came on the job, how bad were things and what led to the contamination of the Elizabeth River?
Well, it's so bad that if right now you went walking just right out the door here into the Elizabeth River, you would coat your leg with creosote, the black tar that you find on railroad ties. And Atlantic Wood at one time made telephone poles here, and you force through pressure the creosote into wood, and then a lot of it ended up out in the river. And there were several wood treaters up and down the river. In fact, there was another one, the Wyckoff Pipe and Creosote facility across across Veneer, and they went on for decades at a time when things getting out of the river weren't that.
No one thought of it.
No one thought of it. It was an easy way to get rid of stuff.
Wow. So, well, how long have you been involved with the Elizabeth
I started working on this project in 2004, and at that point in time, we were trying to figure out how to clean this site up. Now we're actually doing the cleanup.
Okay. So, what is the actual goal? And is there a time frame that's involved in the goal of cleaning up the river?
Well, the goal at every Superfund site is want to protect human health and protect the environment. One other big goal that the EPA has is to put land back into productive use. And I know even when I first started on this project, I met with the Economic Development Department at Atlantic Wood and made myself available that if somebody wanted to lease part of the land here and construct something, that I could help them talk to them about how they could do that in a safe manner. We have a new bridge that's going in, obviously, they purchased part of the Superfund site.
Yeah.
And at one time, people were very leery about buying a Superfund site. We really work hard so that the Superfund site doesn't become an impediment to redevelopment, but and oftentimes can become an asset, because now we have a clean river. People can do construction. There's some certainty about what's going on with the land, and so people can make plans based on what we've done. People are often reluctant to go buy property for fear that they would have to clean up something that somebody else did before they owned it.
Okay.
And so I know that even in 2002, there was the new brownfields amendments to our law that made it easier for people if they would do things like if they weren't involved in causing the contamination and didn't do things that kept us from doing the cleanup and took due care of the land, they could make use of the land without even incurring financial liability for the cleanup. And so that's why the bridge has been able to go in, and obviously other development as well.
Okay.
And so that's become a common practice throughout Superfund sites across the country. Many of them are back into productive use.
Okay, great. What are some of the challenges that you're facing at the moment, or that you have faced in the past?
Well, it's I think one of the biggest challenges we have a lot of work going on around here that's not part of the cleanup work. And so we have a lot of coordination going along with Atlantic MetroCast's ongoing operation, the bridge construction, and things like that, so that we can all complete our projects together without causing delays or inhibiting somebody else's work. So we do a lot of discussion with each other to work together.
I know that the Elizabeth River project, they have a goal, which year it is, to have the Elizabeth River clean enough for what, swimming and gathering oysters or something like that?
Swimming and fishing by 2020.
2020.
So that we've actually have a watershed action plan that a number of us were involved in putting together. And any one particular group doesn't have either the money or the authority to clean up, but when we all get together, I have a vision for making the river fishable and swimmable.
So what has the public reaction been to all of this? Do you perceive that the public's attitude is changing towards protecting the environment and changing things for the better?
I believe the public's interested in having a clean river. In a river, an industrial river like this, you have some people that are more interested in using it for the economy and others that are more interested in protecting the environment. One of the things I really like about working on this river is that the stakeholders, even that maybe have different priorities in mind, all work together for some common goals. And everybody's interested in getting the river cleaned up. Everybody's interested in wanting to allow people to use it, to make a living. And but the good thing is that we're actually now, this is probably the worst hotspot on this river. And this river is the worst tributary to the Chesapeake Bay, and we're actually out in the field cleaning it up now.
Wow. So in closing, are there any things you would like the audience, our viewers, to know about the environment, the importance of cleaning up the Elizabeth River, the importance of maintaining the environment?
I know one of the things I was surprised at is when I first came down here and you see all the industry up and down here is the amount of fishing that goes on in this river.
Yeah.
And I know that there's even crabbing that goes on directly across the river. And the crabs can have contamination in them, especially the yellow mustard. And if you eat whole crabs, you can get exposed to that. And so getting the river cleaned up will allow people to more freely consume aquatic life, and obviously it's part of the intercoastal waterway, so you have not only big ships going down, you have sailboats and stuff like that, and so it'll be a lot easier for people to feel comfortable using the river, as well as the fact there's a lot of people that you don't always know what's going on in the environment around you, and so I want to get it cleaned up so whether you know about the condition of the river or not, you're safe in using it.
Welcome back to Portsmouth Insights. When you hear the word neighborhood, you tend to think of suburbs or urban residential areas. And if you've driven around the downtown tunnel entrance, you probably don't think of that area with its vast business complexes set off from the road as being a neighborhood. But make no mistake about it, the owners of businesses consider these industrial parks as being neighborhoods. And when they decide to build somewhere, they consider the quality of the neighborhood. This area, Port Center Commerce Park, began 30 years ago in an area that was once known as Newtown. In recent years, there's been a building boom here as more and more businesses discover the quality of this neighborhood.
The Port Center Commerce Park dates back to the mid-70s. It was a neighborhood once known as Newtown. It had been wonderful in its heyday, but by the mid-70s it had fallen onto decline and blight. So our Redevelopment and Housing Authority, PRHA, initiated a redevelopment plan and strategy, which was adopted by City Council and submitted to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. HUD approved the redevelopment plan and strategy, and then beginning in 1975, the city received funding through the Community Development Block Grant Program for a series of years, which then enabled the Housing Authority to acquire the property and conduct the demolition. That took several years, and there was a piece of the plan in the redevelopment plan that required them to put some residential back into the area, which was an area that is sort of to the southwest that was developed as Southside Garden Apartments. But the balance, the residual property, the bulk of it, from 264 down to the Shipyard Gate and bordered by 7th Street and the river, became Port Center Commerce Park. The idea was to remove the blight, create jobs, create tax revenue, and establish a higher quality of life for the citizens of Portsmouth. In fact, prior to the redevelopment plan, over 35% of the property in that geography was delinquent and severely delinquent in tax collections. So by acquiring the property, selling it, and putting it back on the tax rolls, it was a win-win for the city. The Housing Authority did the acquisition and demolition during the late 70s and into the early 80s, and then it was, for the most part, a collaborative effort between the Redevelopment and Housing Authority and the Economic Development Authority, whereby the EDA would market the property for commercial and industrial development, and the Housing Authority, after having cleared the property and assembled the land, would then actually be the entity that would close on the property with the newly identified buyer and company. Well, throughout the 80s, there were a couple of companies that came in and established operations there. Wavy TV 10, which is our local NBC affiliated, was one of the first tenants in the 80s, as well as the predecessor or the original builder of the building that is now occupied by Massimo Zanetti. That property was one of the first buildings built in the park. Of course, Massimo Zanetti came in more recently and established their U.S. headquarters in the facility. They're an Italian-owned coffee bean roaster and distributor, and they now have a major preference with their U.S. headquarters in that facility, but it was one of the first buildings in the park. But throughout the 80s, a series of developers came in. In fact, one that was a native of Portsmouth, Challenged Constructors, built the first 2 or 3 multi-tenant buildings in the park. And then the development just continued throughout the 90s. In fact, one of the impetus to continuing that development into the 90s was when the Economic Development Authority took a 10-acre parcel and developed a speculative office building with the city's backing. The EDA went out and built a 100,000 square foot flex building so that there would be product for folks to come and see. That particular site has changed hands 2 or 3 times, and more recently has become the site for the new courthouse complex. The development and the marketing of the park continued well into the 90s and the 2000s, and a series of businesses came in to include U.S. Flag and Signal, which manufactures flags for the military as well as the private sector.
My name is Doris Wilgeth, and I am the 4th owner, proud owner of U.S. Flag and Signal. We manufacture flags and guidons and street banners and different things for the Department of Defense, as well as the shipyard. Busch Gardens is one of our customers. Yeah. The business itself started out in Norfolk, down on Butte Street, which you wouldn't even recognize now. We had grown, and we had a 9,000 square foot building in Virginia Beach when my partner and I purchased the flag shop. We outgrew that building, so then we started renting across the street, and then we were renting up the street, and we had a warehouse across the street. So you were really spread out throughout Pennsylvania Avenue. We got to do better than this. There's got to be somewhere that can house us. And so we went to the City of Virginia Beach Economic Development, and at that time they were trying to move all our type businesses down to Taylor Farm area. And that's a long way out. And then you had, Oceana and the uproar was going on with that, and whether they were going to stay or go. And so I said, and then the Taylor sisters, one week they wanted to sell their land, and the next week the other one did. And I said, we're not getting anywhere. And so I had attended a NAWBO, National Association of Women Business Owners meeting, and they had some of the city officials there trying to talk to the women business owners about, come to our city. We're very welcoming. We can offer you this, that, and the other thing. So I had met the corporate and economic development people for Portsmouth, and I said, yeah, Portsmouth just doesn't have a good name. I just don't think I can come over there. But I was so wrong, and I am so glad we did. We built a 25,000 square foot building. We bought 3 acres of land. We've been here for 7 years, and it was the best move we ever made. I mean, we found a home. We truly did.
The Dax company came in. They're a manufacturer of corrugated steel decking products, and they have a manufacturing facility in the park. The city actually developed closer to the water the Antelos Pavilion, which is sort of on the outskirts of the park and provides an entertainment venue to the companies that are there, as well as all the residents of Hampton Roads. Ocean Marine opened their mega yacht repair facility, dry boat storage and marina along the northern boundary by First Street in the park in the early 2000s as well. And then in the mid-2000s, Wright Engineering, a full-service engineering firm, opened operations and built a new facility. And then more recently, R.S. Andrews came in just a few years ago and built their Tidewater facility, their heating and cooling company that services all of Hampton Roads.
My name is Nathan Bolton. I'm the general manager for R.S. Andrews Heating and Cooling. We are a local heating and air conditioning contractor that does service, repair, maintenance, replacement, primarily in homes, but we also do like commercial as well for all of Tidewater and Hampton Roads area. We've been in Port Center now for 4 years, and we chose the area because of its central location to everywhere we service. We go Newport News, Hampton, Poquoson, Virginia Beach, Suffolk, Franklin, and we do Northeast North Carolina as well. So it's right smack dab in the middle of everything for us. Okay. It's just easy to get in and out of Portsmouth and to service areas around it. You know, we've enjoyed it here. We've been in Portsmouth for quite a while, and Port Center attracted us because of just the quality of the area itself, the local businesses that are around us. We feel very safe, very secure there. We've had no trouble whatsoever with the city and with the location, and it's a great place to have your business.
Okay. Our most recent success in the park has been a company by the name of Lauer Toxicology. They're a national company traded on the NASDAQ, and they announced plans last fall to move into the park. They took a 35,000 square foot vacancy that had been created and now have some 30 jobs, very well-paying jobs, and have plans to add another 10 or 20. There are a few residual parcels that are still available for development, which our office continues with the EDA to market in the hopes of having PRHA close a few more sales. There's also the opportunity maybe to see a little transition to maybe a little more office use in the park. It was initially established as a light industrial park, but we're seeing more interest now that the new courthouse has been completed and the judges move in a few more weeks. We're seeing some interest from companies that are either tied to the court system or service the court system. So there's actually a new zoning district that's in place for a portion of the park, a special district that has been established for a more mixed-use environment to not only support light industrial, but to enhance the office and commercial uses.
We'd like to thank all of the guests on our show today. We asked all of them to share one thing that they would like you to know about Portsmouth. Let's hear what they have to say.
Well, I think the neatest part of Portsmouth that a lot of people don't know, they don't take time to go downtown. You know, it's not very big, it's small, but there's a lot of stuff to do there. There's the Children's Museum, there's the Sports Hall of Fame there. Roger Brown's restaurant's really good to eat at. A lot of local small restaurants that are fun to go and just hang out and have a good time.
Right. I would say one of the great things about Portsmouth for us is we found it to be a very welcoming city to do business in. You know, we've been welcomed by civic leaders and business leaders and community leaders who all seem genuinely happy that we're here.
If you haven't been to Portsmouth, if you haven't toured Port Center Commerce Park, if you haven't seen the neighborhoods, if you haven't familiarized yourself with the main gateways in the city, come visit, take a look. We are constantly told by our business prospects that economic development works with, once they get to Portsmouth, how pleasantly surprised and impressed they are with the business community, with the opportunity to grow and succeed in the city, and the fact that there's a place for nearly every business.
I would say give us a shot. And us, as in Portsmouth, I consider myself part of the community. They have so much to offer, and it's a city that supports their businesses and their people.
There you have it. Portsmouth is a great place to live, to visit, and to do business. But don't take anyone else's word for it. Come to Portsmouth. See what all the talk is about. I'm Rob Lauer for Portsmouth Insights.